I just want to make this interesting point that I think conceivably we have more in common than you may imagine, you and I. Because actually, my route to listening was music. My
Yes.
mother was a concert pianist, and my father was an extremely dominant figure who didn't really have much time for me, that had a lot of time for my brothers who were very technical. He enjoyed technical things. But my mother played the piano, and very
Mm.
quickly I began to stand beside the Blüthner, beautiful, which I own to this day,
Oh,
piano, and I would pick up harmonies and main tunes in music that she was playing. Uh, and I remember at about the age of 7, hearing my mother say to my father, George, the boy can sing. And
brilliant.
at that moment, they decided to put me in for voice trials to see whether I could become a chorister
Mm.
in one of the cathedrals. There could, as far as my father was concerned, only be one cathedral that could be considered. So that would have to be Winchester, because he went to school at Winchester College.
Aha,
Um,
indeed.
and so I was put in for the voice trials at Winchester, and I prevailed. And Alwyn, appropriately named Surplice, um, took me under his wing, and I learnt not only to sing, but above all, and you know this better than I do, to listen. Because music
Absolutely.
is as much about listening in terms of its performance as it is about playing or singing.
It is. That's so fascinating. And I suppose the use of the voice more
Mm.
than anything, because it's something internal that has to be then, made into this emotional sound painting in a way, is even different than if you pick up an object like a violin or a marimba or whatever. And has singing remained important to you during your life?
Extremely important. Um, I mean, I sing a lot, if not in the bath, certainly in the car. I mean, anywhere that I'm alone, I let go. But because of the nature of my job, I don't really belong to a choir or to any
No.
method for delivering song.
But now you
And,
do. You have your son now.
and now I've got my son. I'll be singing to him extensively. Um, I have 2 daughters, an earlier marriage, and I will be singing to them as ever and to their children in turn. Um,
Absolutely.
it's a gift, and it is a gift as much about listening as it is about performing.
It is a gift, and I suspect that, with the extraordinary travels that you've had over the years, that you have experienced so many bridges being built through music. I think that with your passion towards music, you've no doubt kept your antennae fairly sharp in that regard.
Well, yes, and when I was sort of 18, I volunteered as a voluntary service overseas uh, teacher. Um, Gosh, what I had to teach, I don't know, but anyway, I was selected and sent to Uganda, which is
Mm.
how I ever came to have anything to do with Idi Amin, um, although that was to come much later.
Yeah.
And I found myself in the most extraordinarily beautiful spot on the banks of the Nile, about 50 miles north of Lake Victoria, in a school with some 500 secondary school children in it. Uh, I was one of only 3 Mzungus, white men. Um, One was a fellow VSO, and the other was a priest running the school.
Mm.
And otherwise, the teachers were African or indeed Asian. And for me, it was absolute and total bliss. And the music there, which was generated by the children themselves,
Mm.
was of a very high and wonderful order. So music never left me.
And it's interesting that because I've only made a couple of visits to Africa as a patron of Able Child Africa, and we went into a primary school in Nairobi, and you know, I could not believe how extraordinary their music making was. I mean, it's just so innate to them, their voices, their expression, it's their daily medicine. It truly is. And I've never seen such young children, express themselves in such an extraordinary way. And this idea of involving dance, movement, it was a school who also incorporated sign language. It had a mixture of deaf and hearing kids. And this was all just simply a language. It was all about building bridges. And that had a powerful effect because, of course, we're talking about, music education in this country and, how we're lacking it and it's disappearing and this and that and the next thing. And how extraordinary it is to see this environment in a school whereby it is an absolutely, there's just no question that they must do it every day.
And you could be safe in believing that that school would not have been unique, even though it was obviously dealing with a specific element of education. But I never went to a school in Uganda which didn't have this extraordinary musical fiber in their souls. I'm sure it's all here for us to rediscover too, but there it hasn't left them. It's still an absolutely core element of Africa. Music.
It is, and I wonder, there seems to be a surgence of folk music during this past year, especially. People have tapped into what is the music of my area? What is the music of where I live? And people have actually, engaged with that. And this is what's so beautiful about this country. We've got such great, amateur musicians, strong amateur scenes with choirs, brass bands, orchestras, you name it. And it's interesting because I wonder if folk music is in fact our classical music.
Well, it is an absolutely extraordinary thing. And I think the point I would also want to make, which kind of takes me to who I am, I suppose, is that it taught me so much about speaking, about consonant, about vowels, about absolute clarity, and about pace, all of which is so important if you're going to communicate satisfactorily as a teacher, as a politician, as a leader, as a manager, as a worker. We need language. And in many ways, in our highly developed world, it's kind of withered a little bit. And it's when you go to continents like Africa, which it's absolutely universal in Africa, that both song and the words are clear, musical, have wonderful tone. It's extraordinary.
It's a wonderful thing you've said there, actually. Very powerful indeed, because when we think about nursery rhymes, we're babies and we're rocked in our mother's arms or our father's arms, and this rhythm, the pace, the presence of the sound and so on is so amazing. And you're right, I wonder if social media is dissecting the ability to listen to the color of sound and therefore the message. We're missing the how can I put it, the facial expressions of here we are, we're communicating via Zoom, but I can only see half of you, and you could no doubt probably see only half of me. So, but thankfully I can see your face, and which is hugely expressive. But at the same time, it's still not quite the same if we were in the same room, and we could see the whole engine, as it were, expressing themselves. But I do wonder if social media has changed, I suppose, the way that journalism and how the messages are being put across. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. The instant is not necessarily the best way of communicating. It's perhaps a moment when you should have some consideration before you actually deliver what you want to say. And very often I found it myself that communicating on Twitter or any of these systems, whether I've rushed to performance before I'm ready, because I've just thought it and it's gone out. Um, and of course, again, this is the beautiful thing about music. Music can be spontaneous, of course, but kind of organized music necessitates some rehearsal, some thought processing, even before you even get together to perform. Um,
Mm.
I, I mean, I love the social network because I love the capacity to be instant and first and all that. But at the same time, I can see it has a potentially destructive power too.